Bam.
Hey, this is Spencer Garrett, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
What we're gonna do? It's Friday, Spencer. It's how great is life here? Look, in a lot of the nation, it's not as beautiful as it is today here in
It's
Southern
pretty
California.
ridiculous. It's a typical, gorgeous, perfect Southern California sunny day. So I can't, with everything that's going on in the world, I'm going to enjoy this time with you and spend a little time in the sun before we go back to watching the world, on fire. It's bananas out there.
Yeah. The world is on fire in a lot of ways. Let's throw some light on Jeff Pearlman. We both have met him before. You're
Yeah.
headed down to his place for an event and all that kind of stuff because, oh my God, you guys have this not only a great network because we know HBO does great things, but a great story from just everything. I love every single thing about what you guys are involved in.
I mean, Jeff wrote this fantastic book, Showtime, about the Lakers, and one of our EPs, Jim Hecht, loved the property so much, and he approached Jeff a couple of years ago and said, "I'd really love to turn this into a series." And I'm sure, I'm sure a lot of writers have had that similar experience where you've got like a Hollywood guy that comes to you and says, "I'm going to turn your show into a movie or a TV show, or turn your book into a TV show." And if we all had $1 for every time somebody promised something, and it came to fruition. So Jeff, it could not happen to a better guy. He's just a great dude and a terrific writer, and he's just sort of wonderfully overwhelmed by all of this that's been happening with Winning Time. So I'm really happy for him.
Yeah, but it's a fun project for you guys. I mean, it's a fun time, a fun era for the Lakers. You think
Yes,
about
I mean, it doesn't get any better than the Showtime era, 79 to 85, 86. The Lakers were just on fire. They had that incredible rivalry with the Celtics. And as soon as Magic Johnson came on board in 79, they just took off like a rocket. And so this show, in the very great Adam McKay style, covers that era from 79 on. And you meet all of the players and all of the people behind the scenes that made that Showtime era possible. So it's a hell of a lot of fun. It was a hell of a lot of fun to make, and it's certainly a hell of a lot of fun to watch. Even if I wasn't in it playing Chick Hearn, I would be glued to my set every Sunday night because I just love this show so much.
how much of a Lakers fan were you during that time? I mean, you're old
I
enough
was a
to
huge
remember
Lakers
when
fan. I mean, I grew up in LA. I grew up on the West Side, Santa Monica, Brentwood. So around 79, I was 14, 15 years old and just kind of getting into sports, and the Lakers were it, man. They were the Rolling Stones and the Beatles. They were the kings of the sports world in LA. That was the biggest show in town. So you couldn't avoid it, and it was just a joy and a delight to watch them and to watch Magic Johnson just sort of light up the floor every night. So I was very much into the Lakers. I moved to New York eventually, years later for college, and I became a Knicks fan because I was in New York for about 20 years, and I kind of switched my allegiance to the Knicks, that's a tough road to go.
Yeah.
Being a Knicks fan, so I moved back to LA and finally got back with the program, and I'm a diehard Laker fan. But I also grew up with Chick Hearn's face and voice and all of that. He was larger than life. He was the voice of the franchise for 40 years. So it's really kind of a trip and an honor and a thrill to be able to play somebody that iconic.
When you grow up in LA, you have Vin Scully, who was and is eternal. Jamie Jaron, also eternal. Heck, Stu Ahan is as successful as you want to be, but he's fifth or sixth dude in the town in terms of sportscasters.
Yeah.
Because once you say Vin, Jamie, and Chick, you have to get in line behind those guys because 3,000 some odd games in a row. Chick did. He was the voice. You're right. He was the guy, especially back then. There was nobody else.
We definitely have it's such a great sports town anyway, but we do have a great tradition of sports broadcasters. I mean, Stu, obviously, and Fred Rogan, and I think Jim Lampley for a long time was at CBS. And so there were some guys that really knew their stuff. And but I mean, Chick was on a whole other level. He was the cream of the crop. Chick and Vin Scully there's a reason they're both in the Hall of Fame in their respective fields. I mean, Chick is the greatest ever as far as I'm concerned. I'm a little biased, but He's
Here's the thing I want to ask, because when you play the role, did you have to do any actual play-by-play announcing? Because Chick was so that was truly his gift. Was he was never busy. He got to everything. He was just, that was his magic, right? You always knew everything that was going on. He was known for that. His peers thought he was the best at it. Did you have to work on that at all?
Oh yeah. I mean, I did I have to work on it. That was my audition. My audition was about 15 pages of me talking nonstop as Chick Hearn. I mean, calling the play-by-play, doing the announcing that he did. That's how I had to get the job. So I went in and I had a couple of weeks to prepare, and I watched hours and hours of YouTube video of Chick doing interviews with Magic, with Larry Bird, the various Lakers over the years, because his voice changed over the years, but his interviewing style was so conversational and so casual and so relaxed, and he had such a great rapport with every player, whether it was his own Lakers or an adversarial team like the Celtics. But I watched countless hours of him calling Laker games in preparation for my audition. And then when you'll see, as we get further on in the series, starting episodes sort of 5 through 10, as we get toward the meat of the basketball playing, and Magic is, they're vying for the championship against the 76ers. That's when you'll see a lot more of Chick doing the play-by-play. And I had just reams and reams of dialogue calling the games when we were filming the series. So yeah, you'll see a lot of that. But I had to prep for it pretty hard, and then learning that dialogue became literally impossible at times, because he's saying a lot of the same things over and over again, just in different ways. So at certain points, they would have all of Chick's dialogue on giant cue cards on a dolly track going back and forth along the basketball court. And I was doing it that way because he talks nonstop, masterfully. How he came up with all of those Chickisms and all of those things, just beautiful. I mean, he was really, really gifted. So
when you look up his list of Chickisms, it is what everybody says today, to the charity stripe and all these things. So is there a poor screenwriter that's trying to hammer that out, or is this something that you ad lib within some boundaries? How do they decide that? Because that, like I said, that's normally it's a page a minute. Not with Chick.
Oh no. Brett Allen chiming in here saying howdy.
Yeah. Hey Brett, what's up?
Thanks, Brett. Hey brother. Yeah, I mean, Jim Hecht, who's one of our 3 great screenwriters on the show. Jim is the quintessential Laker fan, and so he wanted to make sure that all of those things were incorporated into Chick's dialogue as we got further along into the basketball and the calling the games. So you'll hear a lot of that stuff. You'll hear swish and slam dunk and the mustard is off the hot dog and the jello is jiggling and all of those iconic phrases. We're saving them because hopefully we'll be able to do this over the course of 4 or 5 seasons. But yeah, I mean, I would throw things in. Chick's dialogue was scripted. The play-by-play was scripted, but then I just would start ad-libbing and throwing my own stuff in there. And then, of course, we got the classic commercial break for AD plumbing, AD do, which was a classic thing that I grew up with, the AD plumbing and heating. He's doing all the commercials in between during the timeouts. So all of that stuff, the attention to detail that these writers had, Jim and Max Borenstein and Rodney Barnes, they got everything right. I mean, if you see the pilot, just down to the clothes and the tie pins and the cufflinks, everything was period. So they wanted to make sure that Chick in particular, and I in particular, wanted to make sure that everything was done exactly how it was done in '79. And I think we got that.
How crazy is it trying to set up the blocking for all of this? I mean, you've got your moving cue cards. Yeah, go shut up, because that's a great question.
I would not have wanted to direct one of the basketball sequences. You couldn't have paid me enough. We had great directors. We had Sally Richardson Whitfield, and we had Payman Benz and Damian Marcano. We had great directors who knew the language of basketball, knew how to choreograph these scenes, because you had the actors playing Magic and Kareem who are not 6'9" and 7'1". So I think Quincy Isaiah is 6'2". So they would have them running up and down the court, and then when they'd show them in a close-up near the basket doing a dunk or something, they would either have a basketball doubling them, or they would have, Quincy would be in these kind of, I call them Herman Munster shoes They put him in these big, tall shoes to make them look taller. So a lot of great camera trickery went into the making of these basketball sequences. And also we had this just fantastic Idan, who was a great basketball coach, who coached these guys and put them through their paces. They worked their asses off to get the Quincy to get exactly how Magic dribbled and passed. They all had a very specific way of, passing and running and dribbling and shooting. Sean Patrick Small, who plays Larry Bird, had to learn how to shoot exactly like Larry Bird. Otherwise, people are gonna say that's not what he looked like. I think the cat who plays Keith Wilkes, also Keith was a lefty, I believe, and so he had to learn how to shoot left-handed. So a lot of that stuff. I mean, the attention to detail was really remarkable.
Yeah, the days of throwing an actor out there who can't physically do it, those are gone. Like that, the audience is too sophisticated for that. That's long gone now.
Yeah.
So with someone like Chick Hearn, we do this thing called album fights on the show, and you play two albums and you go track one versus track one, and you score it like a boxing match, right? And these are albums that you've heard 1,000 times. But when you go to assess it, really like what is happening in here, and you really dig in, something you've heard 1,000 times, Chick Hearn, you've heard 1,000 times, all of a sudden you realize there's a lot more there than where you started. And when is that Chick going by on a bubblehead? So what did you learn about Chick when you really dove in all those countless of hours? Because you had to have uncovered things. You're like, I had no idea. I've listened to this man for thousands of hours. And here's the first time I ever heard him say.
I mean, I learned everything about him. I mean, he had I got it over there. He had an unwritten an autobiography. He was working on his autobiography before he passed. It was published posthumously, but it was eventually published, and lots of wonderful anecdotes from the players and the former coaches, and from his wife Marge, his beloved wife Marge, of 50 years. And so I really had a chance to do a deep dive into his history and his past. He lived for the Lakers. He bled purple and gold. And Marge couldn't wait for the offseason to end so he could get the F out of the house and get back to work, because he was just so restless sitting at home. He wanted to get back to the Forum and do his job and call his games. I mean, he lived for it. He was so invested in that team. And there's a beautiful eulogy that Jerry West gives Chick at his memorial service. It's online. I found it on YouTube. And the words of reverence that Jerry West had for Chick and Magic as well really spoke volumes about how they felt about the man. And they talk about his poker playing, and he loved to have a glass of vodka from time to time. He was a real old school guy. He came from another era. But he was really, truly beloved by all the Lakers. And I was very moved. We shot the pilot a little over 2 years ago, and I remember watching that memorial service right before we shot the pilot, because I was just trying to get a sense of who he was kind of off the court, not just the guy who was calling the games. And so I got a lot of great information from him there. Also in Jeff's Showtime book, how he got his nickname, which was kind of a funny story. He was a basketball player, played on his high school basketball team in Illinois, and he got made fun of a lot by his friends and by his teammates. And he was so poor that he couldn't afford a pair of new sneakers. And so one of his teammates handed him a shoebox and said, "Here, I'm giving you a new pair of sneakers." And he opened the shoebox, and it was filled with baby chickens, with chicks inside the shoebox. They were taunting him. They were teasing him, thinking that he was going to get a new pair of shoes, when in reality it was a box full of chickens. And that's how Chick stuck. I mean, they called him Chick ever onward. From that point on, he was Chick, and he's been Chick ever since. Francis Dale Hearn. I never knew that. You just think he's Chick Hearn. You think he came out of the womb as Chick. Yeah.
Because of when he started with the Lakers, he saw a lot of success, but not a lot of championships.
Yeah.
Same thing with Jerry West. How does that change who he is at the dawn of this dynasty?
I mean, he had no trouble criticizing his Lakers. When they were doing well, he would talk them up and praise them. But when they weren't doing well, he wasn't afraid to to badmouth him, and he would do it on the air. I mean, he would do it on the radio. He would say, Silk isn't really stepping up today, or Kareem had a bad game, or Magic was slow on the court, or whatever it was. He would do that so it would kind of send a signals, because he knew it would get back to the players. Not that the players thought he was trashing them, but it was Chick's way of kind of behind the curtain prodding them to say, you guys need to do better. Yeah. So they had a lot of fallow years. I mean, Jerry won the championship in '72, and then after that, it was just kind of a lot of downhill. Yeah. And Chick was there for it. He was always supportive of the team. He was always there for his guys, but he had no compunctions about taking to task when he felt like they needed it, which was a great thing about him. He wasn't just a yes man. He was like, he would talk about them during a game, during a broadcast, during a game. He would trash some of the players and talk about how poorly they were doing. That's how much, and that's also how much sway he had. At one point, Jack Kent Cooke, the owner of the team before Jerry Buss came on, and Jack Kent Cooke said, why are you talking shit about the guys? And Chick said, because I know they're hearing it's going to get back to them, and it's going to make them want to work harder and hustle more. And it did.
Yeah, it's before we talked earlier today about how I was going to do a show with Steve Stoliar, who was the last guy to basically be the assistant for Groucho Marx. Talk about a guy from another era. Wow. Groucho predates flight. His first memories are the Spanish-American War in 1898 or whatever it was, and then all the way to a moonshot. And then you have these other guys like Chick. It's remarkable when you think about the world that they saw versus the world that we're in now. We're essentially the same age. You're a couple of years older than me, but not by that much. What kind of a man is Chick? Like, when you look at who he was and you're trying to play somebody, it's not just a guy reading off a script. Who's the guy that you're portraying? What's his story?
Listen, I mean, I wish I'd had an opportunity to meet him. I really only got to get as much information about him by reading about him on the internet. And he was, I would say, what kind of man was he? He was an incredibly loyal man. He had a remarkable work ethic, which is a rare thing these days for a broadcaster to call over 4,000 games, to do his job so impeccably. So I learned that about him, that he had a marvelous work ethic. He was incredibly devoted to his wife and to his kids. Great father, great family man. Look, I wish I'd been able to meet him in person and been able to answer your question better. What kind of man he was is the guy that you saw. He lived for the team. He lived for his Lakers, and that was the love of his life. Other than his wife Marge, I mean, and his kids, he just loved the Lakers.
When you got the role, let's talk about that. Like, how did you get it? Was this a thing that you auditioned for and sent in a video from your phone like all the modern folks do, or how did you get this spot?
This was the last in-person audition in front of a room full of people that I have had since COVID hit. Now everything is self-tape auditions, doing it with your phone, with your iPad. Right. I've been doing that for the last 2 years now. This is the last time I went in to read for a room full of people. And I went out and I had the appointment, and I went out and found myself like a very vintage 1970s polyester suit, a big fat wide tie. And I went and tried to model my hair and as much as I could to make it look like him. And I went in and I read for the casting director, Francine Maisler, who is they call her the casting goddess. She casts all of Adam McKay's stuff, and she's just a remarkable casting director. And I guess I'd been on her radar for this, and she brought me in. And the audition for Chick, as I said earlier, was just pages and pages of dialogue of just Chick calling the game. And so I had several days to prepare for that, and watching tons of YouTube. I'd gotten to the point where I would watch a Laker game on YouTube and turn the volume down on my television set, and I would just be able to watch it like a silent film and call the games as Chick. So the audition was just me coming in, and there's a scene that actually you'll see on Sunday night, 2 nights from now. There's a scene with Pat Riley where Pat comes to Chick asking him for a job. I don't want to give it away because it's a great scene, but it's a great. It's the relationship between Chick and Pat that is forged in this episode 3 that you see going forward. Pat Riley. A lot of people don't know that Pat Riley started out as Chick Hearn's his side man, his color man, and his gopher. You know, Chick would say, "Go pick up my dry cleaning. Go get my car washed." And they really treated Pat not terribly well. And then at one point, Jack McKinney, the coach, falls ill, and Paul Westhead, the assistant coach, becomes the coach, and he needs an assistant, and Pat Riley jumps in and leaves Chick's side, and the rest is history. And then you see Pat Riley, and he slicks back the hair and becomes the Pat Riley that we know. But yeah, it's a great relationship. There's a lot of great relationship dynamics in the show between Pat and Chick and Jerry West and Kareem and Jerry and Magic and Jerry Buss and his daughter. It covers a lot of ground, and it's just really beautifully written.
You know, that's another credit back to Jeff Pearlman for writing this incredible book. He's so good, and he's so thorough about this. I cannot think of another, even maybe the 86 Mets, that had the kind of characters that the Lakers had. I mean, Kareem, Magic, anybody named Jerry, you know, Jeannie, just over and over and over again.
Even Norm Nixon, which is a story that a lot of people don't know. Norm Nixon, and Norm is played by his own real life son in the show, Devon, who's fantastic, and he's a hell of a basketball player too. So, and then, you know, Magic came on the team, and there was this rivalry between Magic and Norm because Dr. Buss wanted Magic to play point guard, and against Jerry West's better wishes. And they finally gave in and made Magic the point guard because everybody sees he's too tall. He's going to get the ball stolen every time he dribbles down the court. And eventually there was this great rivalry between Magic and Norm Nixon. And then Norm Nixon ends up getting, you know, Magic gets the gig at point guard, and they end up trading Norm Nixon to the Clippers the following season. And that's the end of Norm Nixon. So it's a great story of like family rivalry and family dynamics, much like Succession in a lot of ways. In a sports way, it's Adam McKay, Succession. It's just, again, it goes back to the screenwriting, to the writers who craft these stories every week. Yeah.
How many episodes are there in the series this season?
10
episodes.
Yeah.
And then what is I mean, look, right now it looks like it's a smash hit. Everybody's raving about it. My family that found out that you were coming on, they're like, "We're watching it. It's so great."
Oh,
everything.
Good.
Are you guys looking at getting picked up for a second season already, or no?
We're hoping so. I mean, I haven't heard anything yet, but I certainly hope so. I can't imagine that we wouldn't, but I've been doing this long enough to not count on anything in this business. So if we do, that would be fantastic. I'd love to sit in the makeup chair for 2.5 hours every morning and have the nose and the chin and the hair and all that put on. And once I had all that stuff put on my face in the morning, and I looked in the mirror and I just sort of turned into Chick for the rest of the day. It's the best acting job in the world, you know, to be able to fill the shoes of an icon like him and get to portray somebody like that, and to tell this story in my hometown doesn't really get much better for an actor.
Yeah. Going into that audition, did you have a sense for you being targeted as one of the main people, or were you feeling like it was pretty competitive? How much? What was your sense going in?
I never try to assume. I felt like the audition went well.
Yeah.
I walked out of the room feeling pretty good about it, and then at some point about a week or two later, I heard that there was another. I'm sure they probably saw 50 guys, and then I heard I was down to a short list of like 3 guys. So I've had a cartoon from the New Yorker that's been sitting on my that's been taped to my refrigerator for the last 25 years, from refrigerator to refrigerator wherever I go, and the cartoon says, "Your agent called. It's between you and the guy who's going to get it." So I never take anything for granted when I read something. I had a good feeling about this. I kind of walked out of the room feeling like, man, this is mine to lose, and I sure hope they see this tape, because I really felt like I nailed it. And then I found out about 3 months later, and then I was in the in the wardrobe fitting, and a week after the wardrobe fitting, I was on the court. There was a whole scene, a summer league basketball summer league that got cut from the pilot episode. So Chick isn't really introduced in the first 2 episodes, so you'll see him kind of for real in episode 3 on Sunday night. But yeah, I mean, I never assume. Even I've had auditions that I thought I just absolutely crushed, and you never hear anything. Or I had an audition and I thought I crushed it, and the agent would call and say, yeah, it didn't go so great. So you never know. It's such a weird business.
There's 2 things I want to say and have you comment on it. One of the things is sometimes you go in and you audition for something and you don't get it, but what you do get is the attention of the casting director.
Correct.
And it's not this job, it's 3 jobs down the line. And the other thing, and you sort of, you talked about it, but not this specifically. You find out 3 months later. One of the challenges is in this city, and every project is impossible with timing. And it's like, oh, I wish you would have called me 2 weeks ago. I just booked this movie, and then that opportunity goes away. It happens all the time where either something gets held up, something gets made, and whoever can do the job, they've got good people, they get the job. And so timing is such a big part of it. So talk about that, like, maybe not the right person for this job, but that audition gets you in the room for the next job when they have something perfect for you.
I mean, a lot of times an actor, you'll go into a room full of casting directors, and they will have made up their mind before you've even walked 3 feet in the door.
Yeah.
They'll say, oh, yeah, Spencer, he's great, but it's not what we're looking for. He's too tall, he's too short, he's too skinny, he's too whatever. So you never assume anything is going to go the way you want it to go. The waiting part, I mean, that never gets easier. I waited 3 months. I read for the Tarantino film. I read for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And I didn't hear anything for 6 months. I just assumed it had gone away. And then I called my manager one day, 6 months after I auditioned for it, and I said, "Did you ever hear anything from that Tarantino film?" And he said, "Yeah, let me call." And he calls me an hour later and says, "You got it, and you have a fitting tomorrow." Like, that's how. Yeah, actually, I think they're going to call right now. And manager called me back and he said, "Yeah, you actually have a fitting tomorrow." Like, it all went down. Yeah. Just if I hadn't picked up the phone, who knows? But yeah, weird stuff like that happens all the time. But I got this phone call. I was actually in France with my significant other. We were in the south of France. It was 4:30 in the morning. My cell phone rang, and I looked at it, and it was my agent. And I said, "Todd, it's 4:30 a.m. I can't pick up the." He said, "You're going to want to take this call." And so I snuck out of bed. I went outside into the hallway in the hotel where we were staying, and he said, "You got the Chick Hearn gig?" And I said, I was so groggy and half asleep that it didn't really register. And then, of course, I locked myself out of the hotel, and I'm banging on the door to try to get back in, and she was sound asleep. It was sort of a comedy of errors, but she was happy when she opened the door, and I said, I got the gig.
You're a pro. You've been doing this for decades. You get the call that you got the gig. It's not the first time. It's not the last time it's going to happen. How excited do you get gig to gig, and what would make this one different?
In the case of this, it was Adam McKay. It was John C. Reilly. I think Adrian Brody had signed on at that point. I knew that the pedigree of this thing was going to be on a whole other level. I mean, I've been blessed. I've done a lot of great projects. I've started out with Harrison Ford and Air Force One and Gary Oldman, and I've gotten to work with a lot of terrific people. And so it's always a thrill. I'm the actor that when you get the job, man, I'm just happy to show up. And I show up to base camp and I pull my car into the lot and I see who I'm working with. I love everything about it. There will never come a day when I'm not excited as hell to be a part of something, no matter how big or how small, whether it's a tiny little low budget indie or, a huge movie like Public Enemies with Johnny Depp. This, I knew this was going to be on a different level. I was a McKay fan from all the comedies, from Step Brothers and Talladega Nights and Anchorman, all the way up through Vice and Don't Look Up. I mean, he's a masterful filmmaker and has an incredible way of telling a story. And also, I'm the biggest probably the biggest Succession fan on the planet. I geek out over that show. So, in fact, the first thing I said to McKay when I walked onto the set as Chick Hearn when we shot the pilot 2 years ago, I was just fanning out like crazy over Succession. I said, dude, I will carry a spear. I will say, would you like fries with that on an episode of Succession? That's how much I love it. And so knowing that I was going to be a part of Adam McKay's world was just really just a thrill. But I every job I get is a new opportunity and a new opportunity to, show off what I can do. And this has got, for me, doing the prosthetics and being able to transform my face and change my voice and the way I walk and talk and all of that. It's just an actor's dream. And forget about getting to work with the likes of Sally Field and John C. Reilly and Jason Segel and Jason Clarke, my old friend. And then watching these new cats that are playing Magic and Kareem come from out of nowhere and just shine. It's really beautiful. It's been a great experience.
You have got, according to your IMDb, 7 projects that are still pending coming out. You've been a busy man.
Yeah.
Look, you always book things. I don't want to in any way say you haven't always been busy, but you seem to be exceptionally busy. Is this a COVID hangover for people and just everything's being done? How are you getting all this work? How are you keeping awake to keep up with all this stuff?
That's a great question. There's a couple of things in the pipeline that were left over from COVID that we're revisiting. There's a couple of things, 2 things that I'm actually producing with my producing partner. So I managed to stay pretty busy. We shut down. We got the show. We did the pilot. We got picked up several months later. We were supposed to go into production in April of 2020. COVID hit. We shut down for an entire year. But I somehow managed to keep working, wearing masks and shields and gloves and all of that. I went on to do Goliath and the great show Heels down in Atlanta. I managed to stay pretty busy. And I know a lot of people had a really tough time. And I was just lucky that a lot of that stuff was stuff that I'd auditioned for before COVID hit. So I was able to, I was in Chicago doing Chicago PD the day that everything shut down. And I ended up having to rent a car and drive home from Chicago because I was too freaked out to fly.
Yeah.
And then, things shut down for a while and I got a little bit busy, but I'm also I don't like being idle. I like staying busy. I get a little bananas when I'm not in motion. So I'm either trying to create something or whether it's an indie film or doing a play reading with friends, whatever it is, I'm always trying to keep my juices flowing as an actor.
When you talk about creating your own things and staying busy, one of the curses is that, now Adam McKay has got you on his short list. So-and-so wants you for something. And you have to say yes because you don't want to be a guy that says no.
Yeah.
But you do sometimes reach a level above that where you can be more choosy. You're an actor who works. Yeah. Are you feeling that pressure to say yes to things, even if you're like, I have too many things going on? Because that's absolutely a thing. You and I both know people that they're terrified to say no.
It's been a little bit easier to say no. I'll admit the last sort of 5 years or so.
Yeah.
I've allowed myself to be a little choosier. There was a time where I did say yes to absolutely everything, but those 7 things that you see pending on IMDb, those are things that I said yes to earlier on, and things that I want to kind of bring off the ground and bring to fruition. But it's become a little bit easier, I guess, to say no to certain things. But I'm just an actor who loves to work. Yeah. So it really depends on the story. It depends on the writing. It depends on who I'm working with. If I love the writing and I love the storytelling, and if it's the location is good, it's a place I want to be, and I know that the actors and the pedigree of the project are something that I want to be associated with, then I'll say yes and jump on board because I love working. I just love working. Yeah. Much like Chick Hearn. Maybe we have that in common.
There are so many different kinds of actors. One of the things I've learned from talking to a lot of you, there's folks that just absolutely love, they want to do their own work And to fund that, they go out and they do parts on procedurals because that keeps them alive, allows them freedom to do what they want to do, right? There are all kinds of what kind of actor are you? Like, how do you fit into, if you get what I'm saying? Like, I mean, there's nothing wrong with being a person who does procedurals or daytime drama or whatever it is, but how would you characterize the kind of actor you are in terms of you running your own business?
That's a great question. It sort of goes back to, I suppose, I had been kind of stuck in this hamster wheel of playing the same guys over and over again for a long time, early in my career, from the late 80s to the mid 90s. I was kind of getting cast as kind of, I called it like pricks in suits. I was playing a lot of pricks in suits. And I kind of got in this sort of very comfortable niche of playing similar guys. But I wasn't challenging myself. I wasn't feeling challenged, particularly as an actor. And so I decided to do something about it. And the movie Public Enemies is actually where things sort of turned around for me, because I had made a decision that I wanted to go after more character roles. I'm a character actor at heart. I love playing different characters, whether it's Sean Hannity or Joe McCarthy or Jack Kennedy or Bob Woodward a couple of years ago in The Front Runner for Jason Reitman. I mean, I love the ability to play characters, and that's why we do what we do. That's why we play dress up as little kids. And so I made a conscious decision that I wanted to have more agency over the kinds of roles that I play. So I started producing, and the first thing I produced was a little indie film called Below the Beltway. We shot it in Washington for 3 weeks on a shoestring budget. And we had terrific actors involved, and the movie did very well. And I thought, okay, I'm pretty good at this producing thing. Let's do some more. And then I put out a podcast 2 years ago, America 2.0 with Lawrence Fishburne. And that ended up becoming the #1 podcast in the country. I like finding sort of little jewel projects that I want to attach myself to and helping get them off the ground and associating myself with them and hiring myself and giving myself good work to do.
Yeah, no, you're right. Hiring yourself, creating projects. And it's sort of like a business card. Like, hey, I really know how to do this. Here you go. Here's my #1 hit podcast.
Exactly right. Yeah.
It's a great way to look at it. Is your heart in acting? Is it in writing? Is it in producing? Is it mixed around? Is it moving as you get older?
My heart is always in acting. It will always will be. I mean, I'm a third generation actor. My grandparents were actors. My mom, my aunt, several of my family members. So I will always be a performer, I guess, at heart, an actor at heart. But now moving into producing in the last several years, I love that because it's given me the ability to find projects that I want to do and attach myself to them or not. But that's pretty much what I want to do going forward. I'd love to be able to produce more. Every actor says I always want to direct. I don't know that I have any desire to direct. I don't know if I'd be any good at it, frankly. The best directors that I've worked with, at least in television, the hours that you put in, and the shit that you have to put up with as a director, I don't know if I have the patience for that. So as a producer, it's on a different scale. But so I have enormous respect for a lot of the directors that I've worked with, whether it's Jonathan Frakes on Star Trek or Michael Mann. I mean, to be able to bring something of such an enormous scale and bring it to life is quite a Herculean task. And my hat's off to those guys.
There's a lot of things to manage as a director that have nothing to do with making a great movie.
I'm also an insomniac, and I sleep about 4 hours a night. So
is that right?
Yeah, I'm a terrible sleeper. So I would be, I'd be a wreck. I'd be a wreck because you got to be the first one on the set and the last one to leave, and I'd be on 4 hours sleep. I would be not a happy camper. So.
That brings me back to Chick, because Chick, you don't get 3,000 plus games in a row over how many decades is that? That's a long time, from like mid 60s to the late 90s. You don't get to that unless you leave, because he lived in the Valley, so he's leaving 2 hours early for work, an hour and a half, something like that. I mean, that is no easy, it's not far, but it's no easy drive. And if you
Yeah.
have to be there on time, I mean, like Chick's not messing around with showing up 5 minutes before he's got to be there.
No. He would get there early. He was also a GM of the Lakers. He had his own office at the Lakers. He was. It's another thing I learned about him. Jack Kent Cooke made him a GM of the team. So he was instrumental in the hiring and firing and the recruiting and all of that. I mean, he had a voice in the boardroom. He wasn't just a voice on the court side. He had a voice in the boardroom. So he was a real part of that organization. So he was there doing his homework, doing the scouting reports. He would get there and really do his homework. He wasn't a guy to just show up and put the cans on and start talking. I mean, he really knew his stuff. It's another thing that I just marveled at about him. I mean, he really knew the minutia about all the players. It was really extraordinary.
I don't want to say I know Jeannie Buss, but I've met her. We've talked face to face. We have a common friend or two. So I just think at the world of her, right? But around that franchise, I think then and now, just a lot of chaos because there's a lot of egos. I mean, look, Jerry West is supposed to say you can't have a 6'9" point guard because he knows he's one of the greatest players of all time. He's like, someone's going to steal the ball. It's a long way from 4.5 feet down to the floor. What do you think of Jeannie Buss? And then just in general, the chaos that they had to deal with. That's not what you have to deal with on the St. Louis Hawks. That's just
I have no opinion of Jeannie Buss. I don't know anything about her. I wish I could answer that question.
No worries.
I hope she's enjoying the show. That's all I can say. But I mean, she got big shoes to fill when her dad passed, and she's been running the Lakers, and that's a tough gig. I think she's an extraordinary woman. I think she's done an incredible job in a man's world. That's a hell of a thing. So I applaud her. But I'd love to meet her sometime.
Yeah, she's awesome. She really is. I do think the world of her. The excess, though, that's available in Hollywood that everybody has access to. And just, in a town of measuring up, you got a basketball team full of people that are all, I mean, look how many characters are. Maybe the best basketball player ever or the other guy, Kareem or Magic. Either one of those guys, top 5, top 3, whatever you want. These are enormously successful people. And then you bring in Pat Riley and, oh my God, it's just so, and the time, the craziness of the late 70s, early 80s. That's a lot.
It's a lot. And I think this show does it. It captures it all beautifully. It was a messy, chaotic, fucked up time, the late 70s. I think the opening title sequence of our show is the best title sequence since The Sopranos. It captures that era beautifully. The glitz and glamour, and then underneath it, all of the, you've got like some blondes sitting next to a pool, and then juxtaposed with a guy hitting a crack pipe. I mean, it was all, it all sort of was going on at that same time. And that's what life is messy. And I think McKay captured that so nicely in the pilot, and the writers capture it so beautifully in interweaving all of these stories, the backstory, Magic's relationship with his mom and dad, and when his father brings him out to LA, and his devotion to his mom and to his faith and all of that. There's so many tentacles in this show that it's got a lot of ground to cover, and hopefully over time we'll be able to tell the entire story.
Yeah, and again, this is not the St. Louis Hawks, right? This is LA. So the show opens at the Playboy Mansion. Again, the characters, it's all outsized because of where it's from. And in LA, Magic Johnson, at least back then, he's not even in the top 25 crazy huge people because there's always somebody else. There's always someone in the hills or whatever it is. It's such a neat thing. Are there any outtakey kind of fun things with you being Chick and doing funny stuff? Or what about blue? It seems like this thing with all of the action and chaos, there might be some pretty good bloopers from this thing.
I would think so. We haven't seen them. I mean, they shot it on film. So, this whole show was shot on 35 millimeter, and and an old kind of a video camera called an Ikegami. It's a very rare camera, and a lot of it shot on Super 8. So we didn't like go into a screening room and look at the rushes and see the outtakes of the bloopers. Maybe eventually we will. I tend to not end up on a lot of gag reels and blooper reels, and it bums me out. But I'm so laser focused on learning my lines that I never end up on any gag reels. So I'm sure there's a lot of it. Jonah Hill directed the second episode, and so there was a lot of fun on that show and a lot of laughter and levity and music playing. And I mean, he tried to party atmosphere on the set. So I'm sure there are a lot of outtakes. I'm just probably not in any of them, but.
Well, this is probably why they picked you to be Chick, because I think focus is one of the words everybody uses to describe him when he's working.
Yeah. Well, I hope I nailed it.
Yeah. Well, listen, you're doing 100 things, and I don't want to take any more of your time. Just everybody. I mean, so what I've seen so far with the pilot and part of the first episode has been fantastic. It's so much fun, and I definitely hope they let you guys continue to tell the Showtime Lakers story, because it was. I mean, I grew up during this time. I remember when Magic played center, and all these other crazy things that happened. And I remember Larry and Magic being this friendly rival, or sometimes not friendly rivalry. All these characters, man. I love what you guys are doing. I love that you get to go on this ride, and I love that you're talking about it here on the Break It Down show with me.
Thanks, Pete. I appreciate it, man.
All right, everybody, definitely go check out Winning Time. It's on HBOMax.
I've got some fun, if I can say. I've got some fun on my socials on Instagram. I'm at Spencer Garrett and the number 1, and then on Twitter I'm at the number 1 Spencer Garrett. I post a lot of stuff about the show. I'm going to live tweet it and do an Instagram live during the screening on Sunday night on my episode 3. So if anybody wants to tune in there, you can find me there, and also follow the Winning Time Instagram as well. It's there's some great behind the scenes photos of the cast and crew and how we made this show.
Yeah, there you have it, you guys. Go check it out. And look, if you like basketball, if you like the Lakers, any of this stuff, I promise you're going to love it. If you just like a raucous good time, you're going to love it. Everybody I've talked to has raved about it. You guys have
awesome.
Spencer, you've made a great thing. So, all right, let me stand by 1 second. Let me close this thing down.
Yep. Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank you so much.